In recent years, China's space exploration has made great progress. We have successfully landed on the moon, manned spaceflight, and built the Tiangong-1 International Space Station. This series of milestone events has made the world envious. Chinese Tiangong Space Station. In the current period, space has become the target of major powers. Although our country started late in aerospace and its strength is not as good as that of the United States, it has become aerospace power second only to them, thanks to the hard work of scientific researchers. You may not have heard of Satellogic. It is actually a commercial remote sensing company in Argentina. They have been working to build a giant network around the world. Using the latest nano-satellite technology, Satellogic can provide high-definition, real-time satellite images at a lower cost than traditional satellites. This means that space networks will become more ubiquitous, and these new network technologies will become important considerations when companies and individuals make daily decisions. The latest news shows that American startup SpaceX has reached an agreement with Satellogic, making it the preferred launch provider for long-range exploration satellites. This cooperative relationship seems to have nothing to do with China's aerospace industry, but in fact it involves complicated disputes between China and the United States. SpaceX successfully recovers Falcon 9 rocket. Satellogic was once an important customer of China Aerospace, and they signed an order with China involving 300 satellites. However, the United States suddenly intervened and snatched the order, causing Satellogic to suffer huge losses technically. This change in partnership is not a simple business decision, but there are complex factors between China and the United States behind it. Argentina's Satellogic has signed a contract with China to purchase 90 satellites. However, now they have abandoned cooperation with China and instead cooperated with SpaceX of the United States. Satellogic has an ambitious plan to launch 300 satellites by 2025. This program is an important part of their contract with the United States. Once these satellites are deployed, Satellogic will be able to update the global map on a daily basis, which will have a profound impact on the world's understanding of the Earth. This plan will also bring huge benefits to Satellogic. And the contract fell into the hands of the United States because they surpassed China in terms of technology and cost performance. China won Aero 13 stars. Our country can launch 13 small satellites into space at one time, but our rockets can only be used once, while SpaceX in the United States has the reusability of small rockets, which saves a lot of cost. This is why Argentina chose to cooperate with an American company to use their Falcon series rockets. Although those Americans sound angry when they blame us for being backward in technology, the reality is that cruel. China's first manned spaceflight hero, Yang Liwei. Our country is one of the best in aviation technology, but we can't stop there. We firmly believe that as long as we work harder, the gap with the United States and other space powers will become smaller and smaller, or even disappear completely. It has been nearly 8 years since Trump was in power and Biden was in power, which is the first stage of the Sino-US contest. The characteristics of this stage are: the United States speaks to China with its strength, and does not take China seriously at all. In order to curb China's development, the two governments put pressure on China in the political, economic, military, high-tech, Taiwan issue, etc., vigorously sanctioned China, put China to death and then quickly. China's response is rational, limited, and small-scale, with the thinking of taking a step back and broadening the horizon. Therefore, the United States pushed its nose to the face and pressed on every step, with bad ideas one after another, making China overwhelmed. The second stage, the counterattack, begins, step by step. Facing the unreasonable suppression by the United States, China can't bear it, and there is no need to bear it any longer. So from 2023 onwards, China will begin to use offense as defense, and will no longer follow the example of the United States talking to China with its strength. In recent years, the United States has begun to expose various crimes against China. The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs has obviously become tougher in public. China can yell no to the unreasonable demands of the United States, and ignores the repeated requests of senior U.S. officials to visit China. Let it hang up. China's countermeasures against Micron have made the United States realize something. Next, there will be more face-to-face contests between China and the United States. As long as China draws a tie with the United States in the second stage, there will be a good show to watch in the third stage. In the third stage, through the competition in the first two stages, the United States understands that suppression, sanctions, and intimidation will not work on China. If it wants to continue exchanges, it has to correct itself. The right path for Sino-US exchanges is mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation. Only if the United States does this, Sino-US relations will be normalized. Chinese Minister of Commerce Wang Wentao recently went to the United States to attend the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation meeting. During the meeting, he held talks with U.S. Secretary of Commerce Raimondo. The difference is that the U.S. side is very positive this time, and has launched a frank and constructive relationship with China on economic and trade issues. Sexual exchange. As a result of the talks, both China and the United States agreed to establish economic and trade communication channels. Overall, the talks were friendly and positive, but considering how quickly the United States has changed its face, it is still unknown whether Sino-US relations will really ease. Time to reschedule Blinken's visit to China. You must know that even when Sino-US relations are very tense, the United States has often called for a visit to China, but every time our country has a little fantasy, it can always be broken by the country in the next second. The United States said it wanted to visit China, but it has been full of hostility towards China one after another in action, sending warships, military planes to provoke, continuous arms sales to Taiwan, and even sending instructors to Taiwan. In fields such as semiconductors, it has united with many countries to contain and suppress China. As China is developing faster and faster in many fields, the United States is eager to use various means to contain the rise of our country in order to continue to maintain its international status and influence. The active talks with China this time cannot be ruled out to be another illusion, an illusion of easing Sino-US relations, and the purpose of the United States is likely to ask China for something. In the past, U.S. Secretary of Commerce Raimondo and Treasury Secretary Yellen called for a visit to China several times. The reason is that the debt crisis in the United States must be resolved, but only China can help solve it. After all, China is the world's second largest economy. For this reason, even if the Americans are full of hostility towards China, they have to bow their heads to seek help from China, hoping that China will lend a helping hand. In this regard, our country is very clear that the reason why it did not agree to meet with the United States is to wait for the sincerity of the United States, a sincerity that can be shown. China's attitude is very clear. If the United States wants to have a dialogue with us, it is fine, but the premise is that it must show sincerity. Otherwise, it is impossible to even think about it. It can be said that the Sino-US Commerce Ministers meeting this time was established at the APEC meeting. If it were not for this meeting, China and the United States would not have met so far. It is worth mentioning that the White House is clamoring for revenge for Micron. Because Micron's products sold in China failed to pass the cybersecurity review, relevant Chinese authorities ordered operators of domestic critical information infrastructure to stop purchasing Micron's products. This decision was originally implemented by our country according to the law and was made based on facts. Unexpectedly, the Americans beat it back, calling for a thief and imposing sanctions on Chinese semiconductor companies. Is this what it looks like to have a good talk with China and ease relations? In my opinion, the United States is still the same United States, without any reflection. So to put it bluntly, the meeting between the Chinese and U.S. commerce ministers looks positive on the surface, but in fact China is still lying to itself. The United States wants to ease relations with China, let alone us, the Americans themselves don't believe it. Prior to this, there has been news that J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon will visit China in May. J.P. Morgan Chase is a major commercial bank in the United States, with total assets of $2.5 trillion and total deposits of $1.5 trillion, accounting for 25% of the total deposits in the United States. In a disguised form, this is the veritable boss of the U.S. government. The bosses behind the scenes have personally come forward to talk to China. To some extent, they may not be able to bear it any longer. The Biden administration has messed up Sino-US relations. Of course, this is just speculation, but in any case, the possibility that the United States wants to ease Sino-US relations is very small. On the noisy street, in ragged clothes is posting advertisements one after another. What he wants to advertise is not a commodity, or rather, he already has it as a commodity. What this man wants to sell is his own testicles, male, 30 years old, O+ blood type, left or right. This seemingly terrifying thing is happening on the streets of Iran today. If you walk in the streets of Iran, you can see small advertisements for selling organs everywhere, as if you are visiting a strange bazaar. From kidneys to testicles, from liver to bone marrow, corneas, eggs, everything. According to common people's cognition, people are a whole, but here, people can be disassembled. Organs are individual parts, each with its own price. If you ask why they do what they do, the answer is simple: for money, for survival. Poverty makes these people choose to sacrifice their own organs to ensure the survival of themselves and their families. The poor exchange their lives for money, and the rich spend money to continue their lives. This sad scene is being staged for real. The 30-year-old man who sold his testicles was the subject of an interview with Al Jazeera. This is not the first time he has sold organs. When he opened his shirt, he could find a scar about 10 centimeters long on his right abdomen. 5 years ago, he sold his right kidney. At the time, he was doing odd jobs in Iran for very little pay. He also thought about going abroad to work in search of opportunities. A friend later showed him his own kidney surgery scars and told him that selling his kidneys made him enough money to marry a wife and buy a car. This so-called friend is actually a middleman in organ trafficking. His job is to go after the financially bankrupt people in Iran and persuade them to sell their organs. People who agree to sell their organs are generally arranged in separate houses, mostly dilapidated rental houses, and are not allowed to go out. Before the operation, they will all sign a contract, which says, "We will not be responsible for any complications after the operation." The doctor who operated on them never warned him about the risks and consequences of the operation, nor did he provide post-operative care. The man who bought the kidney got $5,000, and he did use the money to marry his wife, give birth to 3 children, and support the family of 5 for 3 or 4 years. Unfortunately, his youngest son fell ill shortly after he was born, and the hospitals he visited failed to diagnose him. That's why he planned to sell his other organs again, and use the money to take the child to the capital to see a doctor. By the way, heal yourself too. Because since he sold his kidney 5 years ago, when he was just in his 20s, his health has been deteriorating. Now he can't lift anything over 20 kilograms. This made him unable to do a lot of heavy physical work, and his income was greatly reduced. Everything is like drinking poison to quench thirst. Today, the vast majority of transplantable organs in the world come from free donations from brain-dead people. But the number of patients in need of organ transplants is huge, and many people cannot wait for organs donated by the deceased. Thus, paid live organ trading emerged. Under the constraints of morality and public opinion, paid organ trade is prohibited in most countries. But Iran is an exception. It is the only country in the world that allows paid organ trade. Back in 1997, Iran passed laws legalizing organ donation and trade. Kidneys, livers, bone marrow, corneas, teeth, stem cells, skin, and more can be legally traded here. Looking at the income level in Iran, the monthly income of most wage earners is only 1,000 to 2,000 RMB. In recent years, fluctuations in international oil prices and international sanctions have plunged Iran's economic development into even greater difficulties. According to media reports, economic sanctions have caused losses to Iran as high as $50 billion, which is equivalent to twice the budget for 2019. Since May 2018, when former U.S. President Trump announced his withdrawal from the Iran nuclear agreement and the resumption of economic sanctions against Iran, Iran's total oil exports have plummeted from a peak of 2.5 million barrels per day to 200,000 barrels per day, with a daily loss of about $100 million. For the Iranian economy, the move is tantamount to a chokehold. Since 2020, the new crown epidemic has pushed Iran's inflation level to a historical peak. Salary earners can get tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of wages, and all of them are multi-millionaires. However, when prices are soaring, onions in supermarkets cost more than 100,000. In Iran, the price of a kidney can often be sold for 30,000 to 70,000 yuan, the price of a liver can be sold for as low as 30,000 yuan, and a cornea can be sold for more than 20,000 yuan. It is equivalent to the income of the working class in Iran for several years. Therefore, selling organs has become the most helpless choice for the poor in Iran, and even ordinary Iranians who are facing financial emergencies. According to Iranian law, the price of organs and the method of transplantation are firmly controlled by the government. The Iranian government does not call this organ trading, but donation. Donors can get a compensation from the government and 1 year of health insurance. Donors can also ask for an extra remuneration from the recipient. Of the 1,242 kidney transplants performed in 2020, 420 were from living donors. And donors need to find people who need organs through Iranian government-run medical organizations. Then a regular operation is performed, and the donor is only allowed to donate 1 kidney. It can be seen that the Iranian government has played an important role in the organ trade. Objectively, it also protects the donor. However, as the economy deteriorates, more and more people choose to bypass the government and official procedures and sell their organs privately through the internet or by posting small advertisements. This is the black market for organs. Because according to the model of Iranian government supervision, even the rich have to wait in line for organs according to the rules. Buying organs from the black market saves them time. From the perspective of those who sell their organs, bypassing the government greatly reduces their health and safety. But organs can be sold for a higher price. In emergencies or rare blood types, the price will be even higher. The well-developed black market for organs has made more countries look to Iran. Especially the organ demanders in Gulf countries like Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, their income is much higher than that of Iranians, and they can pay more for organs. Some people even bought 2 kidneys from one person at the same time. Kidney sellers are sure to die, but he just wants to use the money from 2 kidneys to give his family a chance to live. And Iran seems to have become an organ warehouse in Central Asia, where anyone can take it. Until 2014, Iran legislated to prohibit foreigners from transplanting Iranian organs. But Iran's poorer neighbor, Afghanistan, has become yet another center for the organ trade. Although Iran is the only country that has legalized the sale of organs, in Afghanistan, in Nepal, in Yemen, in many poor countries, the black market for organs is thriving. According to a survey by the World Health Organization, about 5,000 people around the world sell their organs on the black market every year, and most of these organ providers come from developing countries. Most of the organs they sell go to developed countries. There is even a kidney selling village near the capital of Nepal, where almost every villager has a post-operative scar. In the scars are their yearning for a better life in the future. But can organ trafficking really enrich the poor? The reality is cruel. There is an unwritten rule in the organ black market: the closer the age is to 35, the organ will be considered too damaged, and the price will be lower. Most of the sellers are in their 20s. Even organ trafficking has an age crisis that cannot be escaped. If you are over 35 years old, your organs can only be sold cheaply. Young and strong organ sellers usually have to leave their hometowns to sell their organs in richer countries in order to sell their organs at a good price. But once the operation is completed, the intermediary businessman will no longer care about their life and death. These people can only travel thousands of miles to return to their hometowns, and many of them died during the journey. And these people still voluntarily sold their organs. In remoter and poorer places, people don't know what these organs mean to them. Take the kidney-selling village in Nepal as an example. The first villager said that he sold a piece of meat, and he really got a lot of money, bought land, and built a house. The organ trafficker further added that this will not have any impact on people's health, and this piece of meat will still grow back in the future. Due to poverty, the villagers are struggling to earn a living all day long. They have not received any knowledge education, do not understand medical knowledge, and do not understand the importance of the kidney to the human body. They were pushed onto the operating table ignorantly. He thought he had found a shortcut to getting rich. In fact, there are reasons why many organs of the human body appear in pairs. If one kidney is missing, the other will be overloaded, making it easier to suffer from uremia. Due to the lack of kidneys, various problems will occur in the urinary system, and some people need to take medicine all the time. In fact, the gains outweigh the losses. And when a financially desperate person donates an organ, the financial situation becomes even more precarious due to a significant decline in health. Selling organs has not brought about the life transformation one could have dreamed of. Many fell back into a new health crisis. After the sale of organs, the poor are still poor, but one kidney is missing. Here Zaishi remembered an example given by Mr. Luo Xiang. A rich man needs an organ transplant while a poor man is starving to death. At this time, the two parties reached a deal to buy a kidney for 1 million yuan. This deal seemed to provide the best of both worlds, the rich could get the life-continuing organs, and the poor could get back the capital to continue living. But for organ sellers, a transaction may be an urgent need, but the background of life is still in dire straits. When the body becomes forced to become a means of payment, people lose their cards to continue living. As teacher Luo Xiang said, unrestricted freedom will inevitably lead to the exploitation of the weak by the strong. Paid organ trade not only tramples on the health rights of the poor, but also does not regard the poor as human beings, and a bunch of people waiting to be cut organs. Life is equal, and the life of the poor is also life. Organ trading is like opening Pandora's box. Respect and reverence for every life is worthy of everyone's deep thinking.